Hey you folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to Let's Play some Stellaris. Stellaris is the latest grand strategy game from Paradox Development Studios, but unlike their other titles like Europa Universalis and Crusader Kings, Stellaris is not a historical game, it is a science fiction game. It is still a grand strategy, although it does blend in a lot of classic 4X kind of elements, because you have to explore, you have to expand. You're not playing a country that already exists and has established borders. You have to research technology in a way that's much more classically sci-fi 4X than any of the other Paradox grand strategy titles, for example, and so on and so forth. It is truly, I find that thematically this works extraordinarily well as a game. The events that pop up are really interesting to read and really help to set the theme. And not only that, but they are really they're themed based on your particular empire. So depending on what picks you make during your race creation, you will end up with a slightly different flavoring to absolutely everything in the game. And I thought that was really, really wonderful. I've got about 10 hours put into the game at this point, including some multiplayer with A Kiss for Luck and Briarstone. And all of it has gone swimmingly well. And anyway, let's just get started, shall we? I'm really pumped to get this going. So we're going to go ahead and hit new game over here. And when you first start the game, you do have 8 predefined races. You can also create new ones, and you can save them to the list over here. So you can see I've remade my Serene Cat Empire here, who are slavers. They are, in fact, they're even decadent. They produce 10% less goods, or fewer goods, if they don't have any slaves on their planet. They really, I mean, they're cats. They need someone to preen them and pet them and change the litter box. They don't like having to do that stuff themselves, so they really want to have some slaves around. I gave them xenophobes over here, so they technically are worried about other alien races. They don't trust other alien races. They like to hiss at them through the window. But that does mean that they are more tolerant of alien slavery because, you know, they're okay with enslaving these people. Also, fanatic spiritualists. We are a religious thing. And we get extra happiness from that. So they are just generally happy. They purr a lot all the time because of their fanatical spiritualists. And I took the spiritualist because it would allow me to unlock the divine mandate government type. This is our government here, and this adds another 50% slavery tolerance. So between the two of them, we should have 100% tolerance of slavery. It also makes resettlement cheaper, which wasn't the real reason I did it. The divine mandate is a government type where your ruler rules for life, and you can actually build a monument building as well. So we've got that. I also made the Yetian confederated system here. These people who live on Arctic worlds, they're quite a bit nicer. They're fanatic pacifists instead, which lets them build more embassies. Basically, if you've played Europa Universalis, you know when you send a diplomat out to improve relations? Well, embassies are like that. You don't have diplomats, but you can build embassies in places, and they will just generate +1 relationship every month until they hit 100, and normally you can have 3 of them going at any given time. I'm pretty sure 3, but here these pacifists can actually build an extra 2, but they get less other things going on, although they do get a lot of food. These also be materialists, so they would produce more science from physics and society and engineering research, and they're direct democracy. So this is an interesting government type where you have an election every 5 years, and the elections are actually really interesting because the candidates not only have slightly different traits, although it's not quite as dramatic as changing ruler in Europa Universalis, where going from, you know, someone with a 6 skill to someone with a 0 skill can really dramatically crush your game. These are not quite as divergent from one another, but they also come with mandates that, you know, they promise to build 4 mining stations within the next 5 years, and if they do that, then you get some influence points. So it gives you all these like little micro goals, which is kind of interesting. Also, and I don't have an example, but there is, under government and ethics, so these are the 15 types of governments, and the ones that you're allowed to choose are based on what your ethics are over here. All the ones on the left are all democracies where there's an election every 5 years. They might work slightly differently for different reasons, but they're all have an election every 5 years. The ones on the right are all like monarchies or dictatorships or something like that, where your ruler rules for life, and when your ruler dies, your heir comes into power. And in the middle is sort of a middle ground, where I believe all of them have elections every 40 to 50 years. And I actually haven't experimented with this yet, so I don't know exactly how it goes. But, so you've got your race creation screen. If you haven't seen it already, well, we're not going to go through it too much over here because I really do just want to play the game. Really looking forward to just jumping in here. But there's a lot of different variation that you can throw in for your game. Actually, these guys, I'd probably change them to not be repugnant because they actually are trying to be peaceful, and it sort of sucks if people don't like them. what are we? The Blorg? I don't think so. I'm going to take off Repugnant. I actually have to get another negative pick to make some, to get some points. Or, I suppose I could trade away one of these 2-pointers. This is just 15% more minerals. This is 10% more science of all the things, which is really good. You can also get 15% more science in one particular field. But, I mean, the 2-point intelligent one is really good. Non-adaptive means we're not good at being in other foreign environments. Slow breeders. Slow breeders might make sense over here. Slow learners is just less experience points. It's not less research. Sedentary. Higher migration time and more resettlement costs. Maybe that's fine. I don't think that one's... I don't know how important that's going to be, but it seems okay. So I'm just going to resave these guys with more reasonable traits. Oops, I didn't want to go down. I want to go back over here. All right, so we got that. And what's interesting, so every time you make a race, you can hit that save button, and they'll show up in this list. And you've got this little toggle that you can do. This means right now, these empires, even if I don't pick the Yetian Confederated system, they may show up in one of my games. I can also click again and have it locked and forced. So the Yetians are guaranteed to be in any game that I play, or I can click again and grade them out. They can never show up in any game I play, which is kind of interesting. Actually, maybe, you know what? Let me lock the cat people and lock the Yetians in here so that we'll run into them at some point, which is actually kind of interesting. And then we've got the Quill Sovereignty, which is what I'm going to be playing for this particular run-through. We are Xenophiles, because I wanted to make something, I realized, for the very first run-through that actually wasn't anti-diplomacy, so that way we could work with the diplomacy a little bit and see how it goes. So we're Xenophiles. We will like other races, and unless they are specifically xenophobes, then we should actually get a positive relationship boost with them. We are going to be pacifists over here. Not crazy pacifists, but pacifists. So we're not fanatical. But it does still give us an extra embassy. Means we do get less influence from rivaling people, because we're supposed to be nice, although we still will do that. Our army, which are the ground forces, do less damage. But that's different from our orbital stuff. And we are materialists, which gives us a little bit more of all the science outputs. We're intelligent, so we research faster. We're industrious, so we get more minerals. So between intelligent and materialist, we actually get 15% more to all of our research, which is good. We're sedentary, we don't like to move around, and I took weak again for even less army damage. So we're really not good at ground invasions. I think we're going to need wickedly overwhelming amounts of force to do ground invasion. We're going to see how it goes. And the other thing that you can configure about your race is what their travel method is and what their starting weapon is. You can research all sorts of different weapons, but we're going to start with the red lasers. So there are 3 travel methods. Let me go ahead and go into the game, and then we'll talk about that. Galaxy size. I'm sure people will complain if I don't go huge with maximum races over here. And we are going to allow any FTL method. So races can spawn with whatever, but we could force just a particular type for absolutely everyone in the universe. But yeah, we're going to start with this. So there's going to be 39 AI empires. 8 of them will be advanced AI starts, so they're going to start with an advantage. They're going to be sort of older, more established races. So the 3 methods of travel. The easiest way to explain it is probably to start with warp. Oh, I should read that. I can leave it aside, that's true. So here is our galaxy of 1,000 stars. It is pretty huge, and we are starting right there. Sudbury is our star, and that's also the name of our planet, which you can all define when you set up your race. So we start over here, and we've got a quill for icon. How appropriate is that? And here's the entire galaxy as it is. So, the 3 ways of moving around with your ships. You can have warp engines. Warp engines listed as like, you know, for beginners or whatever. But it's actually, I think plenty of veteran players are going to choose warp as well. What warp is it doesn't require any sort of weird pre-planning or whatever. With a warp travel, what happens is your ship sort of, if you want to go from one star to another star over here, your ships take a moment to charge up the warp engines, then they enter warp speed and travel very quickly from one star to another, and when they arrive at the other star, there's actually a cooldown period where they can't move at all, and then it's fine. So you can go from any one star to any other star directly with a warp engine. And that's why it's considered to be one of the simpler ones, because it's relatively simple and straightforward. The second option are the hyperdrive that use hyperspace lanes. Very classic 4X, where your universe, and you can actually see, if I zoom in on one of my stars here, I can actually see, I can't pan, I think, because this thing's open, these little exit points over here to different stars. Well, I think that those, actually, I don't know if they map one-to-one, but there'd be hyperspace lanes from my star to another star and so on and so forth in a sort of a pattern in a grid. There's not guaranteed to be a connection everywhere. It's entirely possible, for example, that there might not be a hyperspace lane from Sudbury to parsecs over here. But there might be one that goes through Ripigar 2 parsecs. Right? So indirectly. So the hyperspace travel, you have to follow these highways. The upside is hyperspace travel is much faster than warp travel, and there's no cooldown period when you arrive at your destination. You can move and act right away, which is really powerful. Finally, the one we're playing here is the wormhole drive technology. So you can see we don't see any space lanes here, and I can take, if I took one of my fleets in my first battle group, oh yeah, I can't click anything while this is up. I really want to read this. But I can go basically from my homeworld to any star within this yellow circle. This represents the range of my wormhole generator, which is installed in my home system. And I can see that because of this little symbol. So I can jump from here to any star within this circle directly. And it's very fast, and there's no cooldown period when I arrive. Not only that, but I can jump from any one of these stars to my home system with this warp generator directly. I can't go from one star to another directly. I always have to go through my home system, but it's relatively fast. It is very, very quick. But the downside is I have a maximum range. If I ever want to be able to go outside this yellow dotted line, I have to build more wormhole generators. I'd have to go and, say, set up, either colonize over here or set up a frontier outpost, and then build a wormhole generator here, and then I get another nice big blob out. I mean, I suppose I could build one here, but that really wouldn't give me very much space, so that's of dubious utility. So, anyway, that's our transportation methods. I want to show off the wormhole generators because they weren't in the Blorg tutorial, and they are different from most 4X games, so I thought it might be a good one to show off. It is going to require a little bit more work building these warp generators, but it's very satisfying. And it's nice. I think it has the most fun early game, because you can access all this area around your home planet for early mining colonization very, very, very well. It's a little rougher for like overt conquest, because you have to build these forward wormhole bases. Anyway, the Quill sovereignty over here. We are a moral democracy. We have an election every 5 years, but we do have plus 10 happiness. It's worth noting there's another type of democracy, which I believe also gives you a plus 10 happiness, but it also gives you another bonus if I think you can have more core planets or something like that. So it's far from literally the best government. We have our leader here, Torba Voras. This is our initial leader. He's level 4. He's an explorer, and he's warlike. We'll look at that in a moment. Our species is the Quill. We do wormhole travel, our capital is Sudbury, and we have the xenophile, pacifist, materialist, as discussed, and our traits are intelligent, industrious, sedentary, and weak. And our homeworld is a tundra planet. It's a tundra planet as our homeworld. That means we are going to prefer to colonize other tundra planets, and we are relatively tolerant of Arctic or arid planets. But then by the time you get to ocean or desert planets, we're very, very unwilling to deal with that. And actually, at the very opposite end of our spectrum is actually just regular old continental planets, like your standard Earth-like planet. We can't colonize that at all right now. So we're going to need technology to be able to unlock, well, actually quite a bit of this stuff. So we're going to be mostly looking for tundra planets. That's where we're the happiest. So in the eons, since the first primitive, the Quill communities, took shape on the windy plains of Sudbury, our civilization has spread and prospered. As we advanced through the technological ages, we also matured as a species. The violent and based impulses we inherited from our ancestors were done away with, and a global government was formed on the principles of peaceful coexistence. Now, after the successful creation of artificial subspace wormholes, the finest minds of the Quill sovereignty have finished construction of the first wormhole station at the edge of our system. The stars themselves are finally within our grasps. And obviously, this description is based on our particular picks. So we begin paused. There are two views here. This is the system view, and you can click this button or hit M or E. I quite like E to go to the galactic map. It actually works out nicely because you got WASD to cycle your view around, E toggles your map, and Q is another useful tool. It locks your view. If I select a fleet, there's a bouton right here, go to, which is the Q hotkey. So if I have something selected and I hit Q, it zooms me, it locks me there. And in fact, we'll literally lock my camera there so that if these ships move, I'll follow along. You can move your view around. The stars look really lovely. The black holes are great. The pulsars are fantastic. In the system view, you can rotate your view any way around. In the galactic view, and I love this, I have complained about this a lot for 4X games. I started rotating my view around. I'm like, no, you can rotate the map. I'll get lost. I'll sort of forget my sense of where, galactic north is. As soon as you release the button, this made me really happy, like inappropriately happy, because I don't, it's cool to be able to sort of look around and get a bit of a visual sense of what's going on, but ultimately for the galactic map, the most important thing is to stay oriented. And so I like that it has that snap right there. And in the system view, it doesn't actually matter too much because there's not really a north or whatever. And I think the planets do orbit around, and so that's fine. So anyway, there's that. Oh, it's worth noting on the galactic map mode, there's a button here that I don't know why you'd ever want it off. When it is off, you get slightly less information. It's not relevant right now because we haven't explored much, but with it on, you get a lot more really important info about star systems. So you want this little check mark on for detailed map mode. All right. So here's our system. We've got our planet over here, Sudbury. It's got 4 tabs going on here. Generic overview. Our habitability is always 100% on our homeworld, but on other planets it won't be the same. We currently have a population of 7. Our max population here is 16. That's our planet size. We're currently producing 6 food. As long as we produce a surplus, we can grow our planet. Each unit of population eats 1 food. So it affects your happiness, I guess, the excess amount of food. Okay, excess food doesn't increase happiness, but not enough food decreases happiness, which makes sense. And yeah, having a surplus is how you can help grow your people. So our planet has a governor. This is not our empire leader. This is the governor of this particular planet. We've got Governor Hask Valgam, who gives a bonus to happiness, a decreased construction time, and we can clear out blockers a little faster. We can pass edicts and stuff. We'll be looking at that later on. Because that's not planetary edicts, right? It is planetary edicts. I didn't even notice this. We're going to talk about these resources in a minute, but these are edicts I can pass on this particular planet. Oh, man. What? Cheaper building costs, cheaper construction time. It's 150 influence, which is a big investment, but that's really good. Okay, let's close that for now. So, yes, this planet. Then we've got tabs on the bottom. This is the surface view. This is where your population actually lives and works. We can see our little people working various tiles. One of these will be... Actually, I guess our population has not started to grow yet, because normally there'll be a ghostly version of your people to show where the next pop will go. You can move them around to work different things if you want. This is a perfectly reasonable allocation. Although I suppose if I wanted a little less food and a little bit more production, I could do that, and that might not be a bad idea. Right over here is actually the tile with my planetary administration building, which gives me a lot of extra productions, my capital. Not only that, it gives all adjacent tiles +1 mineral, food, and energy output. So if I look at this tile over here, it has a base production of 1 food, it has a hydroponic farm which gives 2 food, and then it's got the +1 adjacency bonus which gives it a total of 4. And I can mouse over this and see the numbers. We're actually making 4.8 food at this spot over here because of the base, the hydroponic farms, the adjacency, 10% bonus from being pacifists, and 10% bonus from being happy. We get a lot of extra food over here. This is fantastic. So we got these tiles, there's different resources. We'll be looking more at this later on. These construction ones are blocked by something, so there's sprawling slums in this tile. So I can't put one of my units of population to work this tile as is. I would need to clear that first. It costs credits and minerals. Let's talk about resources. Look at the top of the screen here. So this chunk of 3 over here are your resources that you spend to get stuff done. We have energy credits, which are used for a lot of maintenance, is one of the big things, especially colonies are very expensive, but it's mostly all goes towards maintenance. There's very few things where you directly spend credits to get something done as far as I can tell. Next up is minerals. This is what you use almost exclusively to build all the things. And early on I find that minerals is one of the biggest sort of caps or barriers to your growth. You really want to try to focus on getting your mineral income as high as possible early on, because it really helps you just build more and snowball. Finally, we have influence. Influence is really interesting. Normally you start the game by generating 3 influence per month. And there's not a whole lot of things that affect that too much. Although if you declare someone as your rival, you get more influence. And that's part of the incentive to rival people in this game. You can have up to 3 rivals. You don't have to rival people the same way as you might in EU4, but by rivaling them, you get more influence. Worth noting, as pacifists, we get less influence from rivaling people. Next up are the 3 science categories: physics research, society research, and engineering research. Technically, you can store up a little bit so that if you don't pick a tech to research right now, it's okay. You can store up a few months of this research before you make your pick. But it's not like Monarch Power from Europa Universalis. You're not meant to store up a bunch, and you don't really spend it on anything other than research. So it's the sort of thing that that's why they don't actually show you the total of how much you've got stored up here, because what you're really concerned with is your per month rate. That's the one that really is quite meaningful, and this will go up quite a bit higher than any Monarch Power you might see from EU4. Even early on in the game, we might hit like plus 15 or plus 20 per month of something, and that's only going to continue to grow as the game goes on. Then we've got a few other things over here: strategic resources, directly controlled planets, and our naval capacity, which is basically our force limit over here. We'll talk about more of these later on. Basically, we have a limit to how many planets we can control directly without appointing a sector commander, which sort of kind of makes part of your empire, sort of kind of like a vassal, but not really. And I think it's going to be a great mechanic to get rid of the late game micromanagement. I mean, this is a galaxy with 1,000 stars. We don't want to have to micromanage every single one of them. Okay, oops. Oh, I didn't realize that. When I hit E, it depends on what star I'm over, and that's the one that it comes back to. Oh! I thought it was just opening and closing the map. Nice. See, I'm already learning something. I've got 10 hours into this, but some of the UI stuff I'm still picking up. A lot of the UI I think is very clean. The outliner is particularly good in this game, and you will use this to basically manage absolutely everything. All right, let's get started. We've got some minerals to spare. Do we want to improve a tile? I think we do. Now, we do have tiles that don't have any buildings yet. I'm just trying to decide. Like, it might be really nice to get more minerals, which I talked about the importance. So a mining network will add +2 mineral output to a tile. The problem is, any resources can actually click. So I've got this tile selected. If I click here, it'll tell me that it's actually not, it's going to remove the food. Well, it's not going to remove the food, but it will suppress the collection. I will no longer be able to receive food from this tile. Basically, any resource that a tile is producing that doesn't match the building that you're building will simply be suppressed and not give it to you. For example, if I hit no here, we've got this basic science lab, which gives us +1 of all 3 of the sciences. And if we built that on a tile that gives us science, so over here, this gives us engineering research, and that's okay. And we will get all 3 of these, plus an extra 1 engineering. So it'll be a 1-1-2 tile for science, and we'll get all of those things. Because it doesn't, like, you always get whatever's on the building. It's just that you only get what's on the base tile if it matches over here. So do we want the extra minerals of another mining network here at a cost of sacrificing a little bit of food? And I think I'm okay with that. We have a fair amount of food going on in this. We have a big food bonus, and while it means we're not getting the food bonus of the extra 10% from pacifist over here, that's okay. We're still going to get the 10% from happy. And actually, oh, I forgot, we're industrious as well. So yeah, I think I'm going to like starting the mining network over here. It's going to take 200 days, and it costs us 60 minerals to get started. So we're going to get that going over there. I'm happy with that queue being there. What else do we have? If we zoom in on our star over here, or on our planet. Oh, we've got a moon. Excellent. You can also spawn as a moon. Your homeworld can be a moon, usually in orbit of a gas giant. So what do we have? We have a few things going on in space here. We've got our science ship over here. We've got a construction ship over here. We've got a tiny little war fleet of 3 corvettes over here. And this is our space base that is in orbit of the planet. This is sort of kind of not independent of the planet. It's basically just what's on your planet. It's one of your 4 tabs at the bottom. I'm going to skip over armies for now. But the spaceport here, whether I click on the planet and select spaceport, or if I just click on the spaceport here, I end up on exactly the same place. These show me all the fleets that are currently in orbit around this planet. Indeed, I've got my battle fleet and my civilians over here, and I can build more ships over here. Currently, all I can build is more corvettes, which is your smallest and initial military ship, more construction ships, or more science ships. I don't think I need anything else right now. We will need more corvettes. It might not be a bad idea to get started on them. I'm going to get started on 1 corvette, because this fleet here with the 69 military power isn't quite going to be able to be useful for anything. I'm not going to rush out and do any conquest, but we will fight some. There's going to be some space monsters and stuff out there, and we want to make sure to be able to deal with that quite early on. All right, the big thing early on is to get your science ship starting to survey. So if we look here, the names of most of the planets are grayed out. Well, all of them are grayed out except for my homeworld, but the homeworld's actually got some extra stuff going on. This means that they haven't been surveyed yet. So what I can do is I can send my survey ship to one of these planets and get them to start surveying. You can also move there and then hit a button, survey over here if you do it that way. But it's quite handy to just right-click on the planet with your science ship selected and tell it to survey. You can also say survey system. It'll start with this moon, and then it'll go and survey everything else. Really handy. You can also, if you're at the galactic map and you've got your science ship selected, I can click on a star and say, survey the whole system there, which is great. But, obviously, I want to start by surveying our home world. Our construction ship doesn't have anything to do right now, but the idea is hopefully our survey ship, well, we've got a lot of stuff in the system. Hopefully our survey ship will find extra resources on one of these planets, or moons, and our construction ship will build some orbital mining stations over there. I am going to go ahead and move my battle fleet out right now. I'm going to use it to I can't really explore, I can't survey the systems, but I can at least visit them so that I know what planets are there. So if I go here, I have basically no information at all about the planets, and in fact, some of these I don't even know anything about the stars. Actually, I think these have technically, because they're in my border here, I do actually know a little bit about them. For example, I know that Ripplegar actually has a habitable planet. It's got an actual tundra planet. So, the gray sort of planet icon next to the star indicates that there's technically a habitable world there. And if you mouse over, it'll tell you the type of world. Once the system has been surveyed, this icon will turn green if it's a very habitable world, which in this case it will because it's tundra, or it will turn red if it's a not really very habitable world because it's a mismatched type that we may not even have the research to do. But yeah, that's great. Okay, so I don't have to worry about that. That's great. The other thing going on the screen is the dashed line here is my sensor range. This is where I could see ships. And the colored blobby space of area here is the area considered to be within my own borders. And that emanates from any world I've colonized, as well as frontier outposts. And you can actually get technology later on that makes your borders push out more. And actually, they will push out a little bit more naturally as well. So I'm going to take my battle group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that out over here. Then I'm just going to hold shift, and I'm actually going to go and have it visit, basically. So that's out of... Oh, no, it's not out of range. Never mind. Just don't have vision. This one's out of reach. It's just outside my yellow circle. So I'm just going to go and do this. I'm just holding shift, and I'm going to queue up a bunch of these moves. Oops. So that I've technically popped each one of these. It's not that helpful, because there still won't be surveyed, but... I don't know, I find it useful information, especially what I like is it will point out any system that technically has something, at least theoretically, habitable. So I've just done that. So what's going to happen, they're going to go out to a star, and then they'll instantly pop back to the wormhole, and then repeat out, and then we'll get an early sense of what's around us over here. Now, by default, your military fleet, so our battle group here has got a battle stance. I should just do this to select one thing. You can rename these groups if you want. First, I don't know, it's going to be the Vanguard. You know, the people who go out first. But I don't like, battle fleet's a little too aggressive for what we're doing now. We have a variety of a button where we can toggle some stuff. Well, we can tell them to just attack something. We can choose how they perform ground support. We have the option, actually, because currently we are pacifists, it's just set to light. Very light bombardment, highly focused on mostly preventing enemy armies from regenerating, and it has a slight chance every month that a population unit on the planet get killed. We can also, later on, we can pass an edict or change a policy for orbital bombardment to allow limited orbital bombardment, which will actually be more effective at taking out enemy armies, but has a higher chance of killing a population or destroying a building. And you can also go full bombardment if you think the only option is to nuke the site from orbit, to be sure. So there's a bunch of policies we can change later on, and there's more edicts that we can pass over here. For example, we can pass an edict that lets us focus on a particular technological area. You actually end up with a slight science gain, because you're losing 10% from 2 categories and gaining 30% in 1, which is really good. But it does cost you 1 influence per month to maintain, and influence is a little hard to come by. So I'm going to leave it off for now. In particular, with the wormhole one, I think we may want to be a little bit more aggressive with some frontier outposts, although frontier outposts do cost influence to maintain, so pros and cons over there. I think we can unpause at this point. Oh no, the other thing I want to show is the third icon here on your fleets, and this tells you how you react to hostiles. So by default here, this fleet would be passive, which means what they would do is they would not actively run towards any enemies. If they get engaged, then they will fight back, but they won't actively seek out an enemy to fight. If you go to aggressive, if they're ever in a system with an enemy, they will try to seek out that enemy and start a fight. And finally, there's evasive, where if there's ever an enemy in the system, they will try to run away to the nearest friendly spaceport. I think with our military fleet here, I'll set them to passive. Don't actually want them to start anything, but I don't want them to actively run away. We might need to babysit them a bit. The civilian ships, by default, are both set to evasive. Sometimes you might want to turn that off to passive because of reasons. In particular with hyperspace lanes, your passive ships or your evasive ships will actually automatically path around any system where a threat is known to be, and sometimes it doesn't work out for you. Sometimes you might be happy with setting them to passive so that technically they can go into one of these systems and then they'll instantly, they'll warp out to continue onto their path. All right, we're going to unpause. We're on normal speed, and our ships will all deploy out onto their job. There's my survey ship. Right, our construction ship doesn't have a job yet. There's our survey ship. It's going to survey this moon. which looks awesome. And if we take a look at our Vanguard fleet, what they're doing is they're moving out to my wormhole generator. Just one of these dashed lines represents the edge of the gravity well. You have to be outside the gravity well before you use the wormhole. You have to build the wormhole generator outside of that, and your ships actually have to reach that before they can wormhole in and out. So they can't jump into the middle of the system or anything like that. There you go. I like the look of these ships. There's a bunch of different variants to, there's 6 different variants for your entire ship style that you can pick from the start. Not only that, but there are different hulls that you can choose for your individual ship designs. And of course the ships come in multiple sizes. These are just corvettes. Very, very tiny little vessels. But there they go. So they'll reach the edge here, I think just beyond this white line. This brown line is the limit of the system. And there you go. They are initiating the wormhole. Oh, we finished another one of our military ships at our shipyard, but that's okay. We can just ignore that for now. I haven't done any research yet, but that's okay. We haven't lost anything. We're accruing a little bit of the points. And there you go. The wormhole has reached our destination of this new system. Just enough to peak, which actually, apparently, does have a continental world, which we can't colonize. All right, so that let me know that our spaceport finished its queue. We won't worry about starting another one quite yet, but we still have to do our research. So there's 3 categories of research: physics, society, and engineering. And in each one of these categories, you get every time it's time to research, you get a randomly assigned. They kind of refer to them as like tech cards. Like you've got a deck of possible technologies, and you draw 3 off the top, and you pick one of them to actually research. So it is randomized, so you don't need to necessarily know, like, and you can't count on things. It's not a tech tree that you can beeline and progress through in, you know, an optimized manner. You have to adapt to your circumstances, both literally in your sort of physical environment, but also in what kind of technologies have been presented. So if I choose blue laser over here, solar panel network and, or I guess orbital energy conversion and administrative AI will both get shuffled back into the tech deck. And I will probably see them again. These are common ones, but there's no guarantee of when that might happen. There are internal rules where, like, you know, you will progress through these technologies in a relatively logical manner. It's not going to show you the most expensive late game stuff until you've unlocked a bunch of the early stuff. And certainly people will probably sort of figure out some of that flow, and it's actually probably all defined in the text configuration files. And so there might be something like, oh, I know I should unlock this because it'll lead me to this later on, but for now I don't have that information. I guess this video has gone on long enough. I should put in a cut. Next episode, we will actually pick these technologies. We may also do a bit of a shuffling of our leaders, and we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching, folks. This is the first video of a new series, so as always, appreciate any favorites and subscribes and likes and shares and all that. First video is the one that's the most important for that. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.